Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out, and a special thanks to the channel's first member. The manhwa starts off by introducing us to Tibers, nighttime skyscrapers, and the floating gardens. We see a man running on the field as a red circle appears beneath him. It is instantly followed by a lightning strike. We see the man has evaded it and that he is some kind of gunslinger, and he is chasing towards something in front of him, which is called the guardian of the garden, cumulonimbus. She points her finger down, causing multiple lightning strikes to appear at the man. He manages to sidestep every single one of them while shooting back counterattacks. Cumulonimbus instantly swipes the bullets away, summoning yet another lightning strike upon where the man was standing. We see this one actually causes some damage as it roughs him up, but he gets behind Cumulonimbus. She doesn't expect it, and he fires his guns, causing her to scream as she actually takes damage this time. We see it pisses her off as she summons magic circles across the entire garden this time, rather than only where the man is. The man realizes he's in trouble, and the sky begins to part ways as she slams her hand down, telling him to become ashes as there are hella red circles each being bombarded with lightning strikes, which starts to obliterate the entirety of the garden top. Cumulonimbus watches as the man's hat floats through the air and lands on the ground without the man in sight. She begins to laugh but hears his voice asking if something good happened. Surprised, she looks down, only to be greeted by his gun barrel. We see it charging up an attack as he tells her adios. A blue lightning strike goes across his face as the lightning instantly hits where he was trying to sneak attack her from. We see that he's managed to backpedal a great distance, saying that this means she can release lightning from her body as well. We hear another man asking if he wants help as he picks up his hat, and we learn the man's name is Ranger. We see the man handing Ranger his hat. Ranger says no, asking him if he forgot, saying that even if he dies, he doesn't want him to intervene. The man says it's just frustrating to sit still without being given a reason. Ranger tips his hat, laughing, saying that ignorance is bliss, and the man stares at him. They both look back up to see a massive lightning storm being conjured up by Cumulonimbus. The man says that he'll help Ranger with this one, and Ranger tells him that he just warned him a few seconds ago not to. Cumulonimbus begins to laugh, asking if they will be able to dodge her roaring thunder dragon too. The shit just looks like a spirit bomb. Never mind, it's actually two giant dragons formed out of both her blue and purple lightning. Ranger asks what the hell this is, and the man tells him that it's her ultimate attack, and they should each focus on luring one head. Ranger yells at him saying no, and he'll do this on his own, saying he needs to stay out of this. But the man ignores him, saying he'll take the purple one, and Ranger tells him to shut up and just get away from here. But the man continues, saying he'll go up and he can go down. We see the blue eyes white dragon going to attack Ranger's life points directly as he's insulting the man. Everything begins to slow down before Ranger can even finish his sentence, and we see everything frozen in place. The dragons, the man running, Cumulonimbus, and gears begin to turn as we see something appear below Ranger moments before he is turned into a chew toy. He begins to sweat nervously and realizes this isn't actually a good thing. The cog below begins to let out a loud buzzing sound, and then chains him up, restraining him from moving. Ranger screams no, saying that he didn't get help, and he didn't tell him to do any of this. He told him to stop, but that bastard just did not listen, and he pleads to somebody to get rid of these restraints, saying that they clearly saw it's not his fault. Time begins to slowly start once more, as if it was stitched back together. We hear Ranger begging for at least one more chance, and we see the man running again as time has resumed. He laughs, saying that he's glad they came together, saying it would have been bad if he wasn't here, and he turns back, asking Ranger if he agrees, only to see Ranger get absolutely mogged by the attack. The man is surprised and calls out to Ranger, asking him what he's doing, telling him to get up. We see Ranger's eyes beginning to lose consciousness, and he says that it ended so stupidly, as his vision begins to blur while looking at the man. We learn that the man's name is Jinsung, and he calls him a fucking troll, saying that he worked so hard to get here, all because of that bitch Nemir. He starts to insult him, calling him garbage, saying that he ruined it all. We see Jinsung is completely surprised, and then we see a pixel version of Jinsung, and he asks what the hell is going on, saying he was the one that couldn't dodge, so why is he blaming him for this one? We learn more about the game that he's playing. It's an online action game called Dungeon Fighter Online, aka DFO. Arad is where it takes place, and the explorers in this vast continent are all risking their lives. There are those who risk their lives to raise their gear, and those who risk their lives for money. Some are just chads with the absolute drip, he alone is the honored one. Jinsung says that Ranger was the most unique one of them all, as we see him calling out to Jinsung, asking him for help, saying that Arad might be in danger of disappearing, as he is someone who is crazy into roleplay. Ranger says they need to take down the awakened Isis, and Jinsung sighs, asking if he just wants a free carry. Ranger says no, and he just needs to let him know what kind of threats may await him on the path to Isis, and he will take down Isis alone. He was fated to fight on his own, like a lone wolf until his deathbed. We see Jinsung reading all of this chat in real life, saying this dude is serious about his roleplay, and he starts saying that he's never met somebody so invested in this shit. He talks like he's a real character in the DFO world. He doesn't know what's so fun about this whole RP thing, but he's grateful. As we see, he's actually streaming the entire thing, and he is someone who risked his life for views. We finally learn that his full name is Baek Jinsung, and he is a streamer for the game, famous for uploading tutorials about it. He says surely he was approached because he knew that he teaches people. He sees the chat laughing, wondering what the hell is up with the RP, and goes along with it, saying this is for the sake of Arad. Jinsung says he had some weird nonsensical things to say sometimes, but he thought he was just attention starved and wanted to be in the stream. Until he started hard flaming him and left the party. We see Jinsung jolt up out of his chair as his monitor cuts off at the same time, and we see that he accidentally unplugged it with the secret foot wraparound cable no jutsu. He says that this is annoying, as he doesn't have anything to upload. Backshots would sound like World War II. He finally gets it plugged back in, and wonders why Ranger was so angry, seeing that he can just use coins to revive himself, wondering why he had to say all that, calling him an attention whore. He goes to click on DFO and says he made it sound like he actually died. When he double-clicks on the game icon, his screen begins to crack. Jinsung is surprised as a bright golden light begins to emerge from it and envelops the room. It starts to slowly open a rift and distort everything around him. Jinsung falls to the floor covering his face, wondering what's going on, and wonders what's going on in his room. All we see is a giant winged goddess as she holds him in the palm of her hand. Jinsung looks up at her and is completely speechless, and she says that he had come in contact with the blade and caused it to break. He asks what she's talking about, asking if she's referring to Ranger from earlier. But more importantly, he wants to know who she is and where he is, saying that he was just in his room. She pushes down on him with her other finger, telling him to take responsibility for his wrongdoings. This causes another crack in the air behind him, and he starts to sink down further into it, almost as if he is falling into a void. Then he begins flying down from the sky like a meteor, passing by a giant whale in the sky along with a tower, heading straight for land. He hits the land and starts scraping across it, leaving behind a trail of destruction in his wake. He starts panting, wondering what's going on. He's surprised by this and grabs onto the blade, wondering what is wrong with his arms. But before he can take anything in, a giant explosion occurs in front of him, which sends him flying backward, and he looks up at the fire. As a horde of goblins begins to emerge, we hear them laughing maniacally. Jinsung is surprised when we see a harpy woman asking him what he is and how dare he do this to her precious forest, saying that he is begging to be killed. He puts his hand out, telling her that it was a mistake, but he thinks the fire she set is causing more damage. She tells him to shut up while launching the goblins at him, saying that she'll make him pay for this. He screams and starts running away, wondering what the hell is going on. He stumbles face first into a pool of water, and we hear him gasping, wondering what's going on, as he can see the face doesn't belong to him. Some time later, as we see his footsteps leaving a trail in the burning forest, the harpy from earlier is yelling, telling the goblins to find him, as he couldn't have gone far. We see Jinsung panting behind a tree, saying the names of the monsters, the flaming Binoche, goblins, and Tao, saying that these are all DFO monsters. He looks down at his hand, saying that it is undoubtedly the appearance of the Dark Knight, one of the classes in DFO, and he wonders if he is now inside the game. He says he just wanted to play the game, not live it, wondering how he can go back to his world. He hears the sound of something fighting, then sees one of the Taos falling to the floor, which surprises him. Even Binoche is surprised, and Jinsung realizes what this means as he sees two people wearing unique outfits, one of them being with the name Bloody Ghost Knight, Blood for short. They begin to walk forward, saying as expected it was Binoche. She asks who they are and how they got here. Jinsung says there's no doubt about it, that is the Ghost Knight class inside of DFO. Beside him is one of the DFO NPCs, Saria Kiram. Saria says Binoche must have a reason to do all of this and asks for her to tell them, as they can help. Jinsung wonders if this is one of the early quest events, saying that the fact that there was an event dialogue must mean that the Ghost Knight is a user who is currently doing the quest. He reads the name above his head, saying that he is a real person. As we see him ready his blade, he dashes off the ground, slashing the Binoche with his attack. She begins to channel some fireballs and throws 3 at him. He easily avoids them, takes the high ground, and readies his blade once more, using a skill called Ash Fork, stabbing straight into the ground. Binoche made it out and begins to cast yet another fireball skill. But before she can even launch it, blood is right in her face. She realizes it's too late as she gets cut up by Blood's skill called Drive Slash. She lets out a scream, and Jinsung watches, saying that he's strong or, to be exact, he's impactful, and it's completely different seeing it in person compared to on screen. Binoche died quite brutally, which is different in person. Never mind, she's still alive, as she says that there was a reason. She says, in the Great Fire 10 years ago, the tragedy of the forest, and she begins coughing up blood. Jinsung says at least she's determined but says that was not the time to be stunned. And since Blood is a real person, he might be able to help him. Jinsung comes out from behind the tree, calling out to Blood, telling him to wait. We see the cog appear below Jinsung just like it did Ranger, and as Binoche continues, we see Jinsung behind some bushes, as he has been tied up. He realizes he cannot move or speak, and Binoche says that they may pass. If they wish to throw their lives away, it's up to them. Jinsung says that's bad, as that's the line that plays when one moves on to the next dungeon. Saria thanks her, and she and Blood begin to leave. As they get further and further from where Jinsung was restrained, we see the ground get stitched back together, and he loses his muzzle. We see him starting to run, saying that he lost them. He wonders what that I was just now, wondering if it was trying to stop him from interacting with Blood. He yells, saying he doesn't know who is trying to stop him but asks if they really think he'll just accept it and give up. It jumps to later, and he is completely defeated, saying he can't do it. This place is dark, wet, and scary. Wondering if the Shadow Thunderland was always this creepy? He says it is a tutorial dungeon that takes less than 10 minutes to clear, and he needs to hurry because if Blood clears the dungeon and leaves, he'll be in a bad situation. We see a bunch of eyes appear behind him, and he turns to see a bunch of ghouls coming out of the woodworks. He screams and puts his back to a tree, saying to get away from him as he has a weapon. One of the ghouls goes for an attack, and he dodges it while turning to the side. Jinsung realizes how close he was to losing his life and makes eye contact with the monster, then starts hauling absolute cheeks, saying this is too different from a scream, and it's so scary and gross. He says it was just a mob in the game, but it's no small fry. He hears a scream off to his side and recognizes it as Saria's voice, saying that must be where Blood is. He spots him from far away and yells, saying that he finally found Blood. But things are complicated, as there is an ice wall forming around them all, and Saria is frozen in the middle inside of a block of ice. There is some kind of boss mob standing before her. It turns, and we learn that its name is Ghoulgush. Jinsung is surprised and taps Blood's shoulder, saying that he sees he is fighting a boss, asking if they can talk. The boss comes in for an attack, and Jinsung realizes that Blood is not moving. The attack comes through, leaving behind a trail of ice spikes as it hits Blood, freezing him in place. Jinsung is surprised by this, and the boss tells him not to interfere as he raises more ghouls. Jinsung starts to bang on the ice, telling him to get out and wonders if he actually just went AFK in the middle of a boss fight. One of the ghouls instantly jumps in, slicing at Jinsung. He avoids one of the attacks, but another one narrowly grazes his chest, causing him to scream due to seeing blood. The ghoul rears its fist back, going in for another attack, and Jinsung finally manages to fight back by blocking it. He says it hurts, and he thinks he's going to die here, and he yells, saying he does not want to die. He cuts the ghoul in half, telling it to go away. He's a little surprised by how easy it was as he turns, seeing the ghoul's body fall apart and even more begin to get summoned and charge at him. Jinsung looks at the blade, saying he understands and begins to smile as he starts cutting the mobs in half. He says these are skills he's seen every day for over a decade, and these moves are ingrained into his memory. He just has to think about using them, and his body will automatically follow, allowing him to do as he wants. He dashes through some of the ghouls. He raises his weapon, calling out to the boss, telling it that it might as well say its prayers. The boss launches some icicles directly towards him, and he starts to think about one of his abilities, which is called Uppercut. He slices in front of him, breaking the attack. He continues deflecting the icicles while charging towards the boss, and he starts naming out all the skills he wants to use in order to create a combo, and we see him rearing back his arm to use the skill normal attack. Before he can finish, there is a giant ice pillar that forms out of the ground, towering over the trees. The boss begins to laugh, but there is a bright light from behind it as Jinsung wasn't caught up in the attack and rather dodged it. He starts to wind up to prepare for the final attack. The boss turns, but it's too late as we see the boss get cut into absolute pieces, causing its body parts to get scattered everywhere. The boss is surprised, and Jinsung explains that a few skills in succession cancel the current attack and go to the animation of the next skill automatically. By utilizing it, it's possible to basically teleport a short distance. All of the ice magic begins to dissipate, and Jinsung explains that it is only due to the skill combo system, specifically a mechanic named Time Break. He says that's the basic technique he used to play Dark Knight, and he looks confident in himself. We see the boss's corpse slowly beginning to stitch itself together, saying that it needs to restore its magic circle. But a sword gets thrust into its skull as Jinsung starts stabbing repeatedly, saying it should just hurry up and die, and he almost forgot how tenacious ghouls are. As the boss goes to fall, he hears the sound of ice breaking to his right and sees that Sarya has been freed. Jinsung says it looks like the dungeon break event has begun, and it seems like he accidentally cleared Blood's quest. He notices something on the ground that dropped from the boss, and it's a purple card with the boss's face on it. He grabs onto the card, and a bright distortion begins to appear again as he is sucked back to being in front of the goddess. He screams, "Not this again." She says it's impressive that a human summoned from a different dimension has completed the first step to becoming the holder of flames. He says the name Nimir, realizing that this is the god of wisdom, Nimir, a deity, rather a more accurate way to describe her as being enlightened. Nimir possesses the power to travel through worlds. He screams, saying that she's only meant to be a game character, so how was she able to summon someone like him from reality? She tells him that she's been keeping an eye on him, and he has become the sharpened blade capable of completing this mission. If it is him who has dedicated his life to Arad, then he can become the true blade of this world. However, he must not stop at being just a blade. He says, "What the hell?" He asks her how he was summoned, but she just ignored the question. He says in DFO, a blade represents an adventurer in the game. People who control those adventurers are the users playing the game. She summoned him, a user, to do something other than becoming an adventurer. She goes to call out to him, and he screams, "No," saying he gets that she's trying to make him do something, but he refuses, asking why he should even help her, saying he wants to go back home. She tells him that it's because it's his responsibility while creating a purple gem. He asks what the hell she's talking about, and takes it straight to the forehead, piercing his skull. He starts to get flashbacks of Ranger telling him that he doesn't need help and how he ignored him and helped regardless, and he realizes now that he was the cause of Ranger's death. The crystal leaves his head, and he slowly starts to feel overcome with guilt as he begins to vomit. She tells him that the blade he destroyed was a human from the same dimension as him. Because of his arrogance to go against the fate of the blade, the Time Lords emerge to straighten out any ripples. All of this was Jinsung's responsibility from the start. He begins to tremble after she confirmed that it was a human, and that he killed somebody. Nimir smirks, saying that in Arad, corruption is spreading. He asks what she means, and she says that corruption disrupted the trials and has led the blade in the wrong direction. If this continues, Arad will only reach a twisted future. He needs to lead the blades to the proper trials, and he must become her forging tongs. He explains that while the player deals with the ghoul, Sarya purifies the magic circle, which is the correct flow of the tutorial. However, since blood didn't move, Sarya couldn't move either. Although it might have been a coincidence, if he wasn't there, she definitely would have been killed. He says that he understands. If Sarya isn't alive in the next quest, then the story itself won't progress, and it is a bug. He says that he must be someone who is here to stop the bugs. She tells him that he is correct, and that is the job of the forging tongs. Now that he understands, he should go forth and do his job. He screams, telling her to wait, but she says that he needs to help the blades, purify the corruption, and hurry to find the source of it. He holds on to a shard of reality, asking her why she is acting as if he accepted when he hasn't decided on anything. She says that once he completes his duty, she will return him to the place he came from. He tells her to listen, asking what he is supposed to do with a low-level character, telling her to give him an op ability or something. She then summons a whole ton of items and explains that she cannot provide him with powers, but she can provide him with one item, so he should pick wisely. He recognizes them all as rare avatars and epic equipment, even some master gear. One of them in particular catches his eye, and he tells her that he knows what he wants now. He says that he wants her to give him the king's contract permanently, which allows him to equip gear that is 10 levels higher than him. One of the gems floats down in front of him, and she says, "As he wishes." As we see the king's crown, it flows into him with a golden light. He is surprised by how bright it is and looks at his palm, saying that he actually has the king's contract in it. She then says it's time to go, and he tells her to wait, asking if there's nothing else, something like infinite stamina. She says that she can do something similar since he is going to be her forging tongs, and she will release him of his need to relieve himself of psychological phenomena and the stress that comes with it. He tells her that's not what he meant, and he tries to explain it, but she tells him to listen, saying that she will no longer call for him, so he needs to find her in times of need. Although he will no longer be able to meet with her, in the dimension corridor, he will be able to meet a part of her, and she will be looking forward to his accomplishments. It jumps back to a forest as he appears face down, ass up, and he hears somebody saying, "lag," over and over, and he turns to see Blood having a stroke. Sarya walks over, asking if he's okay, and Jinsung says that maybe the lag was the reason he couldn't move and wonders why it was at a time like this. He decides to become a master of deception and follow them around, and the next morning arrives, and he follows Blood to a village. He recognizes it as the Elven Guard village, and he says that this doesn't feel real to him. To think he's really in the world of DFO, and to be a bug fixer, it's quite surreal, but one thing is clear, he'll have to prevent deaths like before, and he will do whatever it takes. Here is where he is on the map. Jinsung explains that in order for him to do the mission like Nimir wants him to, he needs to head to the village the quest takes place in. While investigating a couple of things on his way there, he manages to learn a few things. Firstly, he has an inventory. He sees the practice sword that he dropped before. Maybe Nimir returned it to him, saying that's kind of her. He keeps throwing food into his inventory. He looks at it, saying he's just about done, and then opens his status window, or rather his info. He says things like the minimap and auction don't work, and the only windows he can see are these two. And even then, many things from the game are omitted in the window, such as his health and mana. Secondly, to no surprise, he's complete dog shit. The corridor that Nimir mentioned earlier is the Archmage's Dimension Corridor, and he needs to find that in order to go back home. In order to enter dungeons, he needs to raise a stat called Reputation. The dungeon Archmage's Dimension Corridor requires a reputation of 38,000. However, his is only 6, so he has a very long way to go. The bigger problem is, unlike what she makes herself out to be, Nimir isn't a good enlightened. Even if he reaches the Dimension Corridor at the end, he wonders if she will really allow him to return home that easily. We see him setting up a fire at night, and he says it doesn't look like he will need food as he's not hungry, nor does he get full. This must be what Nimir meant by freedom from psychological phenomena. Nimir said that if he doesn't help her, the corruption will cause Arad to meet its end. However, in-game, Nimir's true objective is to revive the creation god and create the world anew. Thus, if he were to actually help Nimir, it would probably lead to only one thing, which would be the complete destruction of the world, or rather, the complete destruction of Arad. He sits there and worries, thinking about it while looking at the fire, and says that he doesn't care in the end, it's just a game, and he just has to get back home. He will make sure to survive, but in order to do that, he will have to go to Hendenmeyer. As we see him looking over a city and a tower, it is the capital of the Belmeyer Duchy. We see him at the entrance checkpoint, wondering how many days it took for him to get here. He says if it was in-game, it would have taken less than 10 seconds. He lets out a sigh. The guards then tell him to halt and glare down at him. Then we see him turned into stone, sitting on the ground, as there is an entrance fee that he completely forgot about. As he talks about it, he hears a man asking him if he needs to get into the city. Jinsung recognizes him as Linus. Linus asks if he knows him, and Jinsung says of course he does. He forgot about Linus, as he is the NPC who gives you the entrance fee. He asks Linus if he could please spare him some money. Linus asks why he should do that, asking why he would even give his money to a stranger in the first place. Jinsung remembers that the money was a reward for saving Sarya, and he wonders what to do to gain his trust. He starts to channel his inner actor, putting on an Oscar-worthy performance, saying that actually, he has a friend that is suffering from the same ghost arm syndrome that he is. He claims that he can see and hear ghosts, but his symptoms have gotten much worse, and medicine won't work. Now he has lost his mind and developed Kazan syndrome, and they are known to attack anyone nearby. During this time of suffering, he heard about a famous alchemist named Hendenmeyer and thought he would be able to help. He drops to his knees, saying that he never expected there to be an entrance fee, and that if he doesn't do anything, his friend will be consumed by the ghost arm, and he doesn't know what he will do. Linus doesn't say anything, and Jinsung begins to sweat nervously, wondering if his special plan of playing to the emotions didn't work. Then he sees some water on the floor, and spots Linus, letting out some manly-ass tears. Jinsung calls out to him, and Linus says there is dust in his eyes, and starts throwing stuff at him, saying that if someone were to take this entrance fee, food, weapons, and travel money, and the great sword of his, Smithy Yaiba, he would feel happy. Jinsung gets on his hands and knees, and thanks him. Linus gives him a thumbs up, saying that he hopes that he is able to save his friend. It jumps back to Jinsung in town, and he says he is finally back. He says thank goodness he was able to remember the official profile and his license. Then he wonders if he should use someone else's trauma for his own gain. The guards tell him next, and he asks why he should feel guilty in the first place, realizing that they are just NPCs in a game, and he shouldn't get sucked into the world. As soon as he enters the town, all he sees are tons of players everywhere, loitering around. He starts to recall the city as 2D, and starts pogging out, saying that he is so glad to see Hendon Meyer in real life. Here's a woman saying that only those who challenge themselves can emerge victorious, and he recognizes her as Chabung. He says her name, and she asks if he knows who she is. He says she is the tournament champion. She says he looks pretty strong, asking if he would like to fight. He asks why not, and then he starts to hear people laughing at him. He turns to see a short pink-haired girl laughing, asking what the hell he thinks he's doing with her. And that he must be obsessed. Then he realizes that everything he's been saying has been sent to the chat window, and he runs off saying that this is embarrassing. He forgot the same thing was happening to Ranger, and he wonders why he didn't think about this. As he runs, he continues to hear their laughter, wondering why this is happening. He finally gets far enough, and is gassed out, saying that he ran too much, and hopes nobody followed him, and that he should really stop talking to himself. He glances over and sees a tavern, which is the Moonlight Tavern, and he asks how he could almost forget about this place, saying that he used to come here a lot while his level was low during the main quest. He says that this tavern has a lot of users on the Sky Tower quest, so it should be a good place to hear about rumors and obtain information. As soon as he enters, the atmosphere on the inside seems very professional, but at the same time, it's very tense as they are all glaring at him, and he wonders if he should just leave, but says he can't back down as the first impression is key. The bartender welcomes him, asking what he wants to drink, and he asks for a glass of milk. She's surprised. He asks her if she can tell him anything suspicious or odd that's happened in the tavern. She says that she finds him odd as hell. But there's something else she'd like to show him. She opens up a briefcase, saying that if they're talking about this, he should have just told her. He tells her that it's quite interesting, asking how much it is. Then we hear Saria saying hello, and we see her walking in with a player, and she introduces herself. Jinsung recognizes it as them being in the middle of the Sky Tower quest, and that this woman must be a user doing the quest. Her name is Fighting Clam, Clam for short, and that she is a female class grappler user. Outside, he hears a woman telling Clam to hurry up. Jinsung wonders where he has heard this voice before, and the woman says this is why she hates newbies. All they do is ask questions, yet they don't even listen, asking why they think they know everything, and to be respectful of the captain's orders. Jinsung begins to sweat nervously, saying there is no way, and he wonders why the Iron Wolf Knight Order is standing outside. Here's another update of where he is on the map. We learn that the Iron Wolf Knight Order are knights that serve under the imperial family of the Delos Empire. They are currently stationed at the Sky Tower for an investigation. Because of this, players will carry out quests in the Sky Tower with individuals from this Knight Order. But he wonders if this Knight Order also appeared inside of this tavern. He knows their names, saying that Fiona and Dan are NPCs you meet in the Puppet Museum of the Sky Tower. You can also meet Linny in the Vestibule of Darkness. But none of these three should appear at this point in the story. These two users are talking about something that happens after the 2 dungeons are cleared. In other words, those 3 will not appear in this Clam Girl story anymore. And if they chased after her like this must be corruption. Saria leaves and thanks the barkeep Shushia. Jinsung realizes he should chase after them. He creeps on them, watching from afar, and he wonders which one of the 3 is the corrupted one. Saying either way, he needs to prevent them from doing something. The guards then tell him to stop, and he's a little confused. And they tell him that if he doesn't show permission, he has to leave. Jinsung goes full psycho and starts screaming at them, and a purple-haired man spots him. Jinsung explains that an entry pass is given by an NPC named Roger Levin, and he will grant you access to the Sky Tower. He gets to his business, and a woman tells him that he's on a business trip right now, and she doesn't have the authority to give him an entry pass. Bro is absolutely defeated. He starts smashing the floor, asking how it's possible that an NPC who gives out entry passes is allowed to leave his shop, asking how he's meant to get into the Sky Tower then. Someone calls out to him, and Jinsung wonders who it is. It jumps to the man talking to the guards, and they say that it is indeed Roger Levin's entry pass, and tells the man he can enter. And we learn that his name is Guess for short. Jinsung snatches the paper, saying he's going in, and starts laughing at the guards, saying he forgot forming a party with somebody who has the pass was an option, and tells Guest that he made it so easy for him. Guest says that he's been watching him since earlier, saying that he's definitely having some real fun with this game, and his RP concept is so funny. Jin-sung tells him that he's not role-playing, and this is just how he talks. Guest starts to laugh at him, asking him who stutters through text, saying that he's really funny, and that he'll kill Behemoth for him since he made him laugh so much. Jin-sung realizes this is bad because he can't accept help. Then he instantly starts to think about the giant gear that would appear, maybe it's an eyeball, and he decides to cancel the party. He leaves hella quick, then we see Guest touching their monitor, and we hear a woman's voice saying that it's a shame that he left, and he was actually really funny, and she wonders why she can't see his username. Later, we hear Jin-sung sighing as he's going up the tower, and he says that he'll have to avoid Guest from now on if he sees him. He looks up the tower's corridor and says this place is so damn tall, and wonders where everybody went. He's not going to waste too much time, and he needs to undo the corruption. He spots Fiona running down the stairs while Linny carries Dan. Fiona says that she's so done with him and that wasn't even hard to dodge. And Dan says he's sorry, and he's trying to protect the explorer as ordered. Linny tells him to stop spewing blood everywhere, and he's not in a state to be worrying about the explorer. Jin-sung wonders if they're leaving the user behind, and says maybe they weren't the ones that were corrupted, but rather it would be their captain, Bon Wallisted, the person in charge of giving them and the rest of the Iron Wolf Knight orders. Jin-sung starts hauling Cheeks up the stairs, saying that he needs to get there fast, and he wonders what will happen if Clam actually meets with Bon. Maybe this will spread the corruption even further, and he needs to stop it before this happens. A dragon bat thing appears behind him. It's called a Louis Ceramalian, gonna call them just Ceres, and lets out a screech, and then dashes past him, scratching his face with its teeth. Jin-sung is surprised, and we see it coming in for round 2, but he reaches into his inventory, grabbing his blade, slicing it straight in half with one clean strike. Then even more appear, and he starts fighting them off one after the other. He says he let his guard down, and that he forgot this place is already inside of the dungeon, as even more mobs begin to charge at him. He slices down another one of the Ceres, and one of the Minius, had to look up the mob's name from the game. Thrust at him with its spear. He dodges it, grabbing onto the handle, kicking the Minius in the chest. While the monster is reeling from the attack, Jin-sung closes the gap and goes for an attack on it, but a second one appears from the side, deflecting it, and then knocks Jin-sung's attack away. The Ceres thinks this is their chance, going straight for him, but he takes care of them and gets behind the Miniuses once more. He realizes this is a bad situation to be in, as he has no time to retaliate, as there are too many enemies, and he is constantly getting pushed back. So he starts to run. One of the Miniuses takes the chance to get right in his face, and he yells for his ability Dark Slash, but nothing happens, and instead he gets sent flying backward. He crashes into the wall, and realizes that he is out of MP, and that he should have leveled up more before coming here. He then notices that he crashed into something different than the wall, and it starts to glow orange, while spewing fire, burning the mobs in front of him, setting them on fire. Jin-sung says he completely forgot that there was a gimmick like this, but he remembers that there is something at the end of the line of statues, and he starts making a desperate run towards the edge of them, as there is a full recovery magic circle there. The monsters get closer and closer towards him, but the air is instantly filled with blood and their body parts as he starts cutting them all into pieces due to having his mana replenished. He lets out a sigh and says that was way too damn close, and that he'll just go ahead and level up now, as this will be a perfect chance. You can see how far ahead Clam is from him right now. Even more Miniuses begin to charge at Jin-sung, but he uses Dark Cross to instantly dispatch them. We see an even stronger version of the Minius called the Mercius, also had to look up its name on the game wiki. Jin-sung doesn't miss the chance and charges straight towards the Mercius, using an ability called Triple Step, putting 3 giant holes in it, turning the dude into a donut. But he doesn't stop there, as he instantly slices 2 more mobs into pieces while seeming to enjoy himself, and starts to laugh, saying he feels like he's the protagonist of a web novel and that choosing King's contract back then was a good decision. He screams, telling them all to come at him, while sending their body parts through the air. We see an even bigger version of the Dragonoid appearing. Jin-sung says that it should have come out earlier while he was still a low level, as he is now level 14 and has a fame level of 17. We learn that the boss is called Lacheus, and it speaks, saying that it spotted an outsider dirtying the tower, and it orders all the other Dragonoids to charge Jin-sung. One of the Miniuses stabs at his throat, but he matrixes it, cutting its heel, causing it to fall to the floor. While it screams in agony, he leaps from behind, giving it some crazy back shots with Dark Slash. Another one comes from the side and swings its spear at him, but we see he's instantly behind it, telling it that it's too slow, and starts stabbing towards its face. Rather, he was supposed to, but instead, he completely whiffed, hitting the pillar behind it, leaving all the dragonoids confused. Jinsung starts to laugh nervously as the Mercius is confused, but it hits him with a left to the face. Jinsung recovers from the second-hand embarrassment by slicing through yet another wave. We see more of the Ceres flying at him from the sky, attacking the floor. They look smug as if they've defeated him, but we see that's not the case, as he is already behind them. He tells them to die, but again, he misses his skill called Hop Smash, and smacks the floor instead. One of the Ceres headbutts him. Jinsung explains that the Dark Knight's combo system allows you to skip the cooldown between skill uses, but it also only allows you to use the skills in the order you chose. Because of this restraint, the way you choose your combos indicates your skill as a Dark Knight. We see that he is constantly whiffing while they are mocking him, and that he is embarrassed about it. He says that he was too stupid with the way he chose his order, and he wasted his skill twice. He would have just laughed it off if it was the game, but obviously, that's not the case as this is reality now. One of the Merciuses wraps its tail around his leg, pulling it out from underneath him, causing him to fall to the floor. He then starts rolling left and right to avoid the attacks, but uses all of the muscles in his leg to stand back up and pull the Mercius towards him with its own tail. He goes to swing at it, but he is too late as a different type of spear goes straight through its chest, almost collating him as well. Jinsung is caught off guard by this as we see Lacheus was the one who did the attack, and that it sacrificed its subordinate without hesitation. Jinsung goes for another attack, raising his sword in the air, and it's called Grand Wave as we see purple slashes launch towards Lacheus, but they are easily deflected without the boss even having to try. Jinsung says he expected it as much, and the boss still won't go down that easily. He blocks a hit from Lacheus, but it's not just one as there is a constant barrage of blow after blow. Lacheus is relentless with its thrusts, but Jinsung manages to grab onto its weapon so it can't go for another one, but that's exactly what Lacheus wanted as it begins to laugh and shocks the hell out of both of them. Jinsung is clearly recoiling due to the shock as his eyes go completely white. Lacheus sends him flying backward across the room, and he knocks into multiple things close to the wall. He glances back over his shoulder, gassed out, seeing that Lacheus is still strong and healthy. He grabs onto his sword and goes for an attack, but it is blocked and he says that it hurts. He attacks Lacheus again, but we see there's no power behind it. He goes for another skill, but we see his feet beginning to slip out from underneath him as he falls to the floor. Lacheus raises its weapon, asking Jinsung if he is done now, and stabs on the floor where he was, but Jinsung teleports away and starts to mumble, saying third. Lacheus gets pissed that he is mumbling and charges in, but now Jinsung is yelling fourth, and we see his sword glowing purple as he goes for another attack on Lacheus, forcing him to block the attack. Lacheus realizes that this one has a ton of power behind it as it begins to shatter the ground beneath him as well as send out a purple shockwave as he successfully landed Hop Smash. Lacheus wonders what this immense weight is and where the sudden surge of power came from when he was on the verge of passing out. Jinsung explains that the true essence of the combo system isn't the evasion of attacks, but rather the timing and order of skill execution. We see Lacheus's weapon beginning to break as Jinsung continues his attack, using another skill called explosive damage, leaving a very big scar on Lacheus's chest after breaking the weapon. Lacheus begins to scream in pain as his blood flies across the room, and Jinsung teleports behind him, yelling out, readying for his next skill. As we see him emerging from the portal right behind, he counts once more, saying fifth, and he explains that the more you use combo skills, the higher the damage accumulates, and the fifth use of the combo skill deals 200% more damage. His sword begins to glow with an even brighter purple than before as he unleashes a giant grand wave directly at Lacheus. We get an outside view of the tower as we see birds flying around peacefully. A giant purple light is seen from outside, followed by a massive explosion from the dark wave, which travels through 6 floors of the tower, as well as cutting Lacheus in half diagonally, and all of the support pillars behind it. As Lacheus's corpse begins to fall, Jinsung struggles to say the dragonoid nest is cleared, and he falls to the floor. We hear someone asking what all this ruckus is, saying that it came from down here. We see more of the Iron Wolf Knight Order wondering what's with all the corpses, and they spot Jinsung on the floor. They call out to their vice captain, telling him that there is someone laying down there. Jinsung says that that shit was way too hard, and he should have got someone else to carry him. He begins to feel refreshed as he gets the level up sound, and he's glad that his health was restored. He starts to stand back up, saying it's time to collect the loot and move on to the next floor. He looks at all the corpses and is confused, wondering where all of his loot is. The man from earlier asks him if he just said loot, and if he's claiming that he killed all these monsters. Jinsung recognizes the voice as the man puts his weapon to his head, and the man asks him who he is and how he entered the Sky Tower. We learn that his name is Hartz von Kruger. All of the other guards instantly point their spears at Jinsung, surrounding him so he can't escape. Hartz tells him to identify himself, state his affiliation, and explain how he knows him. Jinsung asks how he's meant to not know him, saying that due to his unfavorable demeanor, he's the only NPC to receive a personality nerf in the entirety of DFO's history. Hartz says it looks like he has no intention of answering, and Jinsung says it's because he's the vice captain of the Iron Wolves, and that's why he knows him. Hartz then asks how he entered the tower, and Jinsung says he received the pass from Roger Levin. Hartz tells him to show him so he can confirm, and Jinsung tells him that he doesn't have it. Hartz is confused. Jinsung starts to tell him that it's actually with his friend. Hartz asks him who is his friend and where they are. Jinsung nervously laughs, saying probably downstairs, and Hartz tells him to bring his friend to him, and he'll release him once he verifies his identity and the pass, and that there will be consequences if he is lying. Jinsung says that out of all the people he could have run into, it had to have been this guy. He doesn't have time for this, and the fact that Clam visited the Moonlight Tavern and entered the Sky Tower means that she has cleared the Vestibule of Darkness dungeon in the storyline. Therefore, she should currently be heading to the top floor of the Sky Tower, called Castellan's Chamber. On the way to the top floor, she'll team up with the NPCs that will assist her in battle, and amongst them will be the Captain Bon. That person should have reached the top floor by now if she had continued to climb the tower, and he wonders what he'll do if Bon is actually the corrupt one. He stops moving, and one of the guards notices, but he's instantly attacked by a dark slash. Hartz wonders where he was hiding this blade and goes to attack him, but we see it instead stab his portal. Hartz is surprised that he disappeared, but we see Jinsung has teleported behind him. Hartz says that he's doing nothing but using tricks, and that he'll gladly take him on. Jinsung starts charging directly at him. Never mind, it was a fake out as he leaves, saying he's got to go, which confused Hartz even more. Him and his men start chasing Jinsung, telling him to stop. Jinsung says it's a good thing he never discarded his practice sword, and he didn't want to oppose them in the first place. He looks in his inventory, wondering why something is in there. Hartz's spear begins to grow ever closer to his back, and Jinsung turns to see it, pulling something out from his inventory as we see Hartz's spear collide with a bomb, causing an explosion in front of him and the guards. This surprises them, and when Hartz swings to cut through the smoke from the explosion, he's greeted by the fact that Jinsung's actually a lot trickier than he expected, as there is oil now all over the floor, and that Jinsung is holding another bomb in his hand while pouring the oil everywhere. Hartz begins to freeze up, saying there's no way. Then we hear an explosion as he calls him a terrorist, saying that he will kill him when he catches him. Jinsung runs, saying that the explosion is just loud and it won't deal much damage, and that using the oil flash together with the bomb was a bread and butter combo back in the day, and he never expected the items that he bought from Shushia to come in clutch. Later on, as he keeps continuing up the tower, he says the sun is about to set, and he wonders where Clam is as he spots her just ahead of him. He's surprised that he finally caught up, and Saria turns, saying that she didn't expect another explorer. A man named Aganzo tells him they should hurry to a safe place soon, and another man tells him it's alright, saying that if he valued his life, he wouldn't have come here in the first place, and he says that he doesn't care what he does, just to make sure that he doesn't get in their way. And we are introduced to Bon for the first time. Jinsung says that he found him, but he gets cut off by someone else saying he found him first, and a chill runs down his spine as he turns, seeing that it's actually Hartz, and Hartz is extremely pissed, saying that he has guts for throwing a bomb in his face and he'll give him that much. Bon asks Hartz what's going on, and Jinsung realizes he's in a bad spot between the both of them. Hartz tells Bon to catch him. Bon readies his blade, and Jinsung realizes he's screwed as there's nowhere for him to run. Hartz says that he hopes he's prepared. Jinsung activates Ultra Instinct and points out the window, telling them there's a naked man trying to piss on all of them. For some reason, it actually works. Bro rolled a nat 20, and they turn, but there's nothing in the sky, and Jinsung leaps out of the tower while screaming. They look over the railing, wondering if he just offed himself. But Jinsung starts stabbing into the side of the tower, slowing himself down, while falling floor to floor. As he loses all of his momentum, he leaps into one of the rooms and lands safely, saying that it was right in front of him, but luckily it seems that the corruption hasn't spread yet, so he needs to hurry. Whatever their plan is, he needs to purify it before they reach the next dungeon. Saria wonders what his deal was, and Bon says that he doesn't know, but there are plenty of weird guys. He tells them to forget about that, as he's pretty tired, saying that they should take a break on the next floor. Jinsung begins to groan as he climbs up the stairs again, saying that he is never climbing up anything ever again. He wonders where Clam is, hoping they haven't gotten to the next dungeon yet. We then hear Aganzo telling Bon to stop. Jinsung rounds the corner, spotting Bon with his sword in the air, about to strike down Aganzo, and he screams, realizing that he was too late, but instead it turns into some straight yaoi, as Bon starts massaging Aganzo with the hilt of his blade, saying that his muscles are way too tight. Aganzo lets out an anime girl voice, telling him to stop, and asking if he can do it a little softer. Jinsung then falls dead on the stairs, and that is the end of the manhwa. Bon then asks Saria if she needs it too, and she says that she's good. Jinsung says that he guesses they're still fine, but he'll keep an eye on them until they reveal their true colors. It jumps to a bit later, and he says there's no way. Bon doesn't try to hurt the other NPCs, nor does he try to control the Knight's Order. On the contrary, he's completely normal. Aganzo says they'll need to investigate the layout of this place, that way it'll be easier to find the master, and that he'll go with Bon to investigate this side. Bon begins to walk up and stands before Clam, having a WWE stare down. He then begins to smile while raising his hand, and Jinsung thinks it's time, but instead, Bon puts his hand on Clam's shoulder, telling her that he'll see her later and winks at her. Jinsung looks suspicious, but Bon hasn't done anything wrong, and the dialogue was the exact same as in the game, so maybe Bon is not the corrupted one after all. But if it isn't him or the other low-ranking knights, then who would it be? Jinsung says that based on his experience, he thought it was the Knight's Order that appeared at the tavern. But now that he thinks about it, you aren't able to see outside the tavern once you are in it. It might be something that the game omitted, but it is not corrupted. There's a loud sound of metal footsteps as Bon and Aganzo are greeted by some living armor monsters that are covered in barnacles. Bon laughs, saying it looks like the owner of this place has no manners, and he dared to send the grunts when the guests have arrived. He yells, telling them to get their boss to come out. Jinsung is confused by the wording, saying that now that he thinks about it, a card appeared when he defeated the boss Gulgish, and wonders if that means if Bon is corrupted, a card will appear only when he is killed. But based on the original story, Bon should not die here. If he were to die here and change the story, that would be no better than the actual corruption. He says that maybe, just like it was with Gulgish, it is the boss monster this time as well, and the more he thinks about it, the more sense that makes. As they effortlessly dispatch the living armors, Bon wonders where Hearts is, and Aganzo says that he is probably still chasing after the freak from earlier. Bon says they will make sure to arrest him if they find him. Jinsung says that's the problem though. Thanks to what happened with Hearts, Bon and the knights are on the lookout for him, and in order to help them during the boss fight, he needs to find a way in. We see a different set of stairs. Someone is unsheathing their sword after defeating some living armors. The monsters' corpses fall below them, and a lady laughs, saying she is impressed by his skills as always. The man tells her to stop making fun of him just because he is old, and says that they have gotten pretty far, asking how much they have left. She says based on the magic and how thick it feels, they should almost be there. We learn that her name is Sharon, and the old man asks her to move to her side for him. She does so, and he instantly lets out some attacks. The attacks fly past her, hitting something, and she calls out to him again, calling him GSD, asking what he is doing. GSD says excuse me, as he thought it was a monster. We see that Jinsung was the one he attacked. GSD says even though he held back on his strike, to withstand that attack, Jinsung must be skilled. However, he is unable to control the pulses coming from his ghost arm. Jinsung begins to sweat nervously, wondering if he almost died, and Sharon asks him why he is following them. Jinsung tells them he has a favor to ask, and we learn that Sharon is the black fairy magician who operates the Magician's Guild and the Magic School. GSD is a legendary ghost knight who hides his identity and operates the back alley Ghost Blade Gym. Sharon asks GSD if he knows him. Before they can answer, Jinsung explains that those are their basic stories, but they are also NPCs who join the final fight after being led by the captain. If they can vouch for him, the Knight's Order will have no choice but to let him join, and he asks if he can join them as a comrade. Sharon asks why they would do that, saying they just met him. Jinsung says he knew it. He is guaranteed to be turned down if he just comes at them like this, but he has no choice. Turning their distrust into trust will give him a better chance in the long run, and there is only one way to do this. He points to GSD, telling him that he is going to need him, calling him by his full title, Grand Swordmaster Duncan. Sharon is surprised, saying no way, and Jinsung smiles, asking how that is, saying that nobody should know his true identity. Sharon asks what that means. But GSD has no reaction at all to the name. Jinsung starts to wonder why he doesn't know it, saying that was the name written in the Ghost Knight description. Of course, the update did manage to delete that part of the story, but it wasn't deleted, rather, it was changed. Jinsung starts to think about what to do next, but more mobs appear from behind them, and GSD notices them and says that they have guests that he has to attend to. Jinsung starts to tell himself to think, wondering why he used the name GSD in the first place. He says that it must be related to DFO, and then something clicks, and he calls him the grandson from the Tower of Despair. GSD stops moving, and Sharon turns back, saying that he seems like an interesting guy, but they are in a hurry, so he should leave them be. But before she can finish her sentence, GSD begins to release a powerful aura, destroying the floor beneath them, sending out shockwaves, instantly killing all of the monsters. Sharon sticks her hand out, trying to get him to calm down, and GSD slowly turns, calling out to Jinsung, asking him who he is while releasing an even more condensed aura than before. Jinsung begins to sweat nervously, saying that he was just guessing and didn't expect to be right. If you've watched till the end, comment, stone, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.